Hello and welcome to our review of the 1 to 100 scale MJH 00 Gundam 7 Sword/G. So right out of the box, you're going to get the 00 Gundam, the GN Buster Sword 2, the GN Sword 2 Blaster, 2 clear green beam sabers, the GN Katars, the GN Sword 2 Long and Short, a bunch of attachment pieces for attaching the sword onto the Gundam itself, some extra parts for the Katars, a set of spare dynamic hands, and some interchangeable armors for the kneecap and the wrist joints. You'll also get a large bag of spare parts, as well as a stand, but the instruction manual doesn't actually tell you how to build the stand, so you'll just have to wing it, and of course an attachment point piece to attach onto the Gundam itself. So in terms of the Gundam itself, I have to say I am overall a pretty big fan of the 00 Gundam design, but the redesign here for this model kit is a bit jarring, mainly in that there's a lot of smoother shapes instead of the more angular shapes of the normal Gundam. There's also a lot more of the inner frame just protruding through, and overall gives the impression that this is a bit more bulky than it actually is. So here's just a quick comparison with my Master Grade 00 Gundam. He's a bit trashed because I'm trying to turn it into a diorama. But overall, you can see that the proportions are relatively similar, but the design of the MJH module is definitely very jarring. I think the biggest thing I noticed is just how big and oversized the shoulder pads for the GN drives are. But overall, as I mentioned before, the MJH model is completely unique and not at all just a carbon copy build of the Bandai version. So onto articulation, the head has a pretty good range of movement. Go up and down, pretty solid. Left to right, no complaints there. But the most interesting thing is that the collar is actually on this swinging mechanism, so it can swing back and forth ever so slightly. So in terms of articulation in the torso, it's going to be able to rock back and forth relatively smoothly. It's going to have a very impressive ab crunch, as well as being able to look up a little bit. Rotation-wise, it's not too impressive, but it should be able to get you at any angle you'd want for a Gundam pose. So in terms of the arms, you're going to get a very nice 360-degree rotation there. The bend is not going to be quite 180 just because the forearm armor is so bulky. But the wrist here does have a bit of movement, and you're going to have the 3-finger trigger finger split. The actual shoulder movement, as you'd expect, is very limited due to these huge pads, the GN drives. But if you slide them ever so slightly out of the way, you'll see that the armor pad here can move up and down. The white pad can also move up and down, like so. The full armor can also slide all the way up, but again, it's being blocked by the pad. And in terms of being able to stretch out, it can move forward to reach across the shoulder a fairly respectable amount. So in terms of the backpack, the thrusters here are going to be able to move up and down ever so slightly, but that's pretty inconsequential. The main movement is going to be up here where there's a hinge that allows the entire drive to swing back and forth, but these hinges are pretty weak. You can see now it's splitting open. You should probably cement that in if you want it to be strong at all. But the mechanism here allows the GN drive to swing back for a boosting motion and swing all the way over the shoulder if you want the shields that are first used in its first launch. It should be noted that you can pop the GN drives out, and you can see here there's a bit of a design detail change, mainly in this blue part. But unlike the Master Grade, it doesn't give you the gray condensers to replace them with. So now onto the waist articulation. I'm going to be quite frank, there is none. There's 2 sliding pieces back here for the beam sabers, but that's pretty trivial. The ports on the side to attach the GN swords to are permanently exposed, unlike the Master Grade where there's a sliding mechanism to hide them when not in use. So onto the legs, you're going to be able to kick back for a solid 80 degrees. And also, likewise, kick forward for a bit less, probably around 60 degrees. But in terms of the leg bend, you're going to be able to first bend it here at this joint, and then a second joint up here. It's actually a very tight bend. But once you do get it, you get a very weird clicking sound. But you do get a very solid bend, though not quite 180. So the classic 00 Gundam uses these white knee parts, which you can change in very easily. But for the 7th sword variation, they're going to be blue with a part to attach the Katars. And in this case, the MJH variation includes a special gimmick where you can slide that part down to reveal some yellow missiles. There's also some arm mechanism here, but I'm not quite sure what it actually does. The manual doesn't specify. I think it might be to hold beam sabers. So now onto the feet, the ankle armor will be able to slide up if you want to tilt your feet forward. The feet will be able to slide its tippy toe forward, but not too much down. And the motion side to side is very impressive given that there is basically no ankle armor. And due to the shoulder, the GN drives, and the side skirts, neither the arm nor the leg are going to be able to spread out outwards a full 180 degrees. So now onto the weapons. The first thing I'll look at are the GN beam sabers. They're pretty remarkable, except their shapes are a bit unique compared to the usual round beam sabers. And I'm pretty sure the beam sabers of the 00 Gundam are supposed to be red, not clear green. So here are the GN Katars, which is actually my favorite weapon on the 7th Sword/G. I really like the clear green blades and how they kind of fill out the bottom half of the 00 Gundam. But here, like all the weapons except for the beam sabers, on the MJH release, they're going to be slightly redesigning it, and in this case, individually, these Katars are no longer symmetrical. And on the opposite sides, you're going to be able to find these attachment points for the knee armor. The one thing these third-party kits love is their extra gimmicks, and the GN Katar is no exception. Here, this piece is going to be able to slide right off, and you're going to be able to attach on an alternative attachment point. And this piece does slide all the way out, though I really have no idea why. It just leaves a giant crevice. But the main point here is that there's going to be an extra handle for the 00 Gundam to hold it either like a pistol, or I guess more so like a Tongfa shanking weapon. To be honest, I'm not quite sure why this thing even slides out. So here is the GN Sword 2 short, which is basically just a dagger. I do like this clear green piece. Really adds to the whole GN vibe. And in terms of gimmicks, you are going to be able to snap the blade in half, and there's 2 attachment points, but weirdly enough, they don't give you a wire to recreate the extended gimmicky movement. But if you attach this back up together, you can also turn it into its blaster mode. So if you just rotate this 90 degrees, like so, you can also slide the handle down here, like so, and now you have the GN Sword 2 short in its blaster mode. Here is the GN Sword 2 long, and it definitely lives up to its name. Here's the short one for comparison, definitely a step up. So the handle is going to be the exact same, the only difference is going to be the blade here. It's going to be much longer, with an extra handle here, and some more details here for the blasters. I have to say, even though it's just basically 2 white pieces slapped together, it does have some nice molding here for some lining. Now of course it also has a blaster gimmick in that you can slide it 90 degrees. Turn the arm guard here down, and then wiggle the entire handle down. And now you have the giant GN Sword 2 long beam rifle mode. And you can even slide that open for a second handle. Interesting enough, you are given 2 of these regular GN Sword 2 blades, but I have to say these are a lot fatter and shorter than the ones on the Master Grade. And they're also a lot less detailed. There's no gray pieces in there for the blasters. And for just a comparison, as you can see, it is a bit shorter than the GN Sword 2 long. So onto the big guns, quite literally, here is the GN Sword 2 blaster. And the GN Sword 2 part of its name probably comes to the fact that it shares the exact same handle as the regular GN Sword 2s. But everything else is completely different. This is absolutely massive, a huge clear green piece for the blade. Looks very nice. I like the touch of the white barrel. In terms of moving parts, you're going to get a handle here and a handle here, so the 00 Gundam could really channel its inner virtue. It's also going to have a piece out here that slides out. And other than that, the handle here can also slide down for its blaster mode, while it can slide up for its sword mode. So this is only casually mentioned in the manual, but you can slide the entire green blade part out, and there's going to be a handle here for the 00 Gundam to wield just the sword part of the blaster. So the GN Buster Sword 2 technically has 3 main forms, and here it is in its storage mode. The main thing is that you're going to be able to pull out this circle opening to attach it onto the shoulder. So last but not least is the absolutely massive GN Buster Sword 2. I don't even want to think about what the Buster Sword 1 looks like. But as you can see, it's very nicely detailed, and it's absolutely massive. This thing is taller than the Gundam itself. But in terms of moving parts, you're going to be able to slide these here open, sort of like a hilt. You're going to be able to slide this entire part up to reveal a circle to dock onto the GN drives. These parts individually will also slide out to reveal some clear green pieces. On the regular master grade and the perfect grade, there should be an LED gimmick where the green lights can shine through these green pieces to give it the illusion of GN particles. This bottom half here will also slide open to reveal more clear green pieces, as well as a clear green piece up here. But most notably unique to the MJH model is that the tip over here will split open, sort of in a scissor fashion. I'm not quite sure what the actual application of this is, but it does look pretty cool. And if you slide open the back wings, it makes the GN Buster Sword 2 kind of look like a spaceship, with a giant cannon in the front. Here it is in its shield form. Basically, you just kind of lock everything up here down and slide these 4 pieces out to expose the 4 pieces of clear green plastic. And on the back here, there's going to be a handle you can swing out to actually hold it like a shield. So here it is in its sword form. You're just going to slide this part down to hide the circle, open these 2 wings to give it the illusion of a hilt, and now the 00 Gundam can wield this giant and massive Buster Sword. And now it's time to attach these massive weapons with the help of some small attachment points. The GN Sword 2s can slot onto the waist very easily with this attachment point, which just locks in here, and then the circular pattern will lock into the circular pattern onto the hilt. And if you attach this attachment point onto the GN Buster Sword 2, it'll be able to attach onto the shoulder, relatively simple. And similarly, the GN Sword 2 blaster also has a similar attachment point. You just want to slide the handle down to get out of the way of the GN drives, and it should connect pretty easily. So here is the fully armored 00 Gundam 7 Sword /G in all of its glory, and I have to say I really like the look of the kit. With all of its weapons on, it bulks out considerably, but unlike the 00 Riser, which just has a jet head stuck on the back and some binders on the top, this one has actual weapons that it looks like you can grab and go to work with. I also really like the 7 Sword idea. It seems like a good spiritual successor to the Exia, whereas the 00 Riser was a weird mid-season upgrade that frankly still looks kind of weird when you consider it's just a backpack, a jet attached to the backpack of a Gundam. So for a quick little spin around, you'll see that while he is pretty solid, he does have the slight weight issue where the Buster Sword 2 is a bit heavier than the blaster, so it doesn't quite balance as well as the 00 Riser. But I think the overall look can't be beat. So the beam sabers are undoubtedly the most boring weapon, but it does allow you to pose the 00 Gundam in an action pose while still maintaining the full armored look that it has with all its weapons stocked. The GN Katars definitely look very good, and I'm very surprised at how solid the 3-finger trigger finger split hands are at wielding these weapons. The joints are very tight, so it holds onto the weapons very well. I'm really not sure this whole pistol Katar thing's working out, though the backhanded look does look a lot more intimidating. The backhanded Katars does give a bit of a Wolverine vibe. And since this kit does come with a base, I think it's best we make use of it. Using the custom attachment point, it'll attach very easily into the butt of the Gundam. Holding the tiny little dagger should come as no surprise, but holding onto this massive GN Sword 2 long is pretty impressive considering there's no peg or anything, it's just friction holding the sword in the hand. Unfortunately, in rifle mode, the handle here is simply too small for the hand to get a good grasp on, but because the GN Sword 2 Long has 2 grips, you are able to kind of cheat it into a shooting rifle pose. The GN Sword 2 Blaster has a little mechanism that attaches onto the back of the arm, so it's a lot more stable than its non-blaster counterparts. And I have to say, this pose looks a lot better with the blaster than the regular Sword 2 Long. Unfortunately, getting the hand to actually hold the blaster in its sword mode is pretty unfeasible, so you're going to have to surrender back to the ground where it can use the ground as a stand. Although you can still kind of get the effect by using the gimmick of detaching just the giant green bit and using that as a buster sword. Also, using the Gundam itself as a stand also solves the problem. With the included attachment piece to attach the shield onto the arm, you're going to get a very solid connection, and I'm very impressed that this giant buster sword works very well as a shield too. It's actually very impressive how this kit can hold up these giant weapons with no stand or hidden trick to assist it. It should come as no surprise that he's not going to be able to wield the Buster Sword 2 with just his hands. He's going to again need the help of gravity. So now for some of my final thoughts as well as pros and cons on this third-party kit. So being a third-party kit, it does have some fitting issues, but surprisingly, they're really not that bad. I built a lot of third-party kits, and this is definitely one of the best ones in terms of fitting. So if you're new to the third-party kit scene, I'd say this is a pretty good way to start. There is some issues with some loose pieces just up here in the shoulder armor and the GN drives. They tend to pop around, especially when you're trying to move around the arms a lot. They pop off and it gets pretty annoying to pose. Whereas the legs kind of have the opposite problem where they're too tight, so getting them to bend can be very, very difficult. I think another con is that this kit doesn't come with any foil stickers or decals, which can get annoying because you don't have foil stickers for the eyes. The eyes are molded out, so if you want to paint them, it's not too difficult to mask, but it's still kind of weird that they don't include them. For the decals, especially water slides, I kind of expect my third-party kits to come with them, but I'm not too bummed out that the kit doesn't come with them. It just feels like something that is a bit lacking for people who do like it. And on a similar note, the instruction manual can be a bit confusing. The overall build is pretty straightforward, but some pieces like the action base that it comes with has no instructions at all, so you just have to kind of figure that out yourself. On to some of the pros, I have to say I really like the slight redesign of the 00 Gundam. It's a bit more organic, almost like a middle build. And more impressively is that the inner frame is not at all a copy of the Bandai version. So being able to build the same kit but with a completely different inner frame is pretty entertaining. And the fact that it has pretty good fitting for a third-party kit definitely helps that. Another thing I really like is that the gimmicks they added, being able to open the pincers on the Buster Sword, extra parts for the guitar, stuff like that, I think is very impressive. With the exception of the GN Sword 2 Short not having that wire for its gimmick, which is, I think, a pretty weird thing to exclude, but I think that's the kind of thing most people just play with once and then never really use again. I think the final big pro of this kit is that it has a lot of playability to give you a lot of extras, just a lot of play options, so I think is kind of what third-party kits are all about, just giving you a lot of options for people to do. So overall, between this and the Bandai kit, I'd say you can't really go wrong with either. This being a third-party kit doesn't really have a set price, so if you find this for a much cheaper price than the Bandai version, I'd say go for it. It feels like a pretty suitable alternative. If you built the 00 Riser or the XN Riser and you want to still have a 7 sword but don't want to build the exact same thing, get this. Like I said, it's basically a completely different build, though the weapons are kind of similar. So overall, not a bad kit. Definitely a pretty good first third-party kit if you guys are interested in that. So yeah, thank you for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.